One of the common defense tactics or insurance company tactics in traumatic brain injury cases is to say, well, there was no head strike, there was no loss of consciousness, or the symptoms didn't come on right away. And what you find out if you look at the literature, and even the US government has said these types of things, you do not need a head strike, you do not need a loss of consciousness. The symptoms are not necessarily going to appear on the very first day by the time that you get to the ER department. And so what we look at is the common definitions of traumatic brain injury or mild traumatic brain injury, and we use those in our cases to effectively cross-examine the defense experts. Now, in terms of mild, moderate, and severe, a lot of this is based now upon what's called the Glasgow Coma Score. And that is essentially a scale that goes from 3 to 15, and it's looking at how responsive you are immediately following the crash. If you were passed out and non-responsive at all, you would have a Glasgow Coma Score of 3. If you're completely responsive, you would have a score of 15. The fact that you have a score of 15 does not mean that you don't have a traumatic brain injury. The fact that you didn't have a loss of consciousness or you don't have any head strike does not mean that you don't have a traumatic brain injury. So the way that these are defined is mild traumatic brain injury is a Glasgow Coma Scale score of 13 to 15. Moderate is 8 to 13, and severe is 3 to 8. A lot of this also has to do with, and I think about it a little bit this way, that mild traumatic brain injuries comprise about 80% of all traumatic brain injuries in the United States. And the defense doctors will say, well, people with mild traumatic brain injuries can't have long-term consequences. Everybody resolves within a couple days or weeks. That is absolutely not true. And part of the importance of hiring a good traumatic brain injury lawyer is that we understand the literature and we can tell the jury or the adjuster that that information is absolutely false. Approximately 15% of all people with mild traumatic brain injuries will go on to form permanent ongoing problems. There's a higher percentage in moderate and severe cases. But one of the big divisions between mild, moderate, and severe is also, is there a frank bleed in the brain? These are the types of things that they will actually be able to see on a CT scan most of the time in the hospital if they do a head scan on the very first time that you come in. Obviously, mild traumatic brain injuries are problematic for people long term, but they're most likely not going to cause death. Moderate and severe can kill you, and there's something that you have to take very seriously. If there's any type of bleed in the brain, we have unfortunately represented people who had slow bleeds that weren't caught initially and went on to die. You know, those moderate and severe injury cases, we handle those as well, both in terms of people who survive them and also traumatic brain injury cases that kill people. We have experience in all three of these variety of cases, mild, moderate, and severe. And it's important that the traumatic brain injury lawyer that you hire understands the difference between those and the medical definitions, because they can become critical and usually do become critical in trial.